morning to each and everyone, especially to our teacher. My name is Rosalyn and my name is Gorami Ayendina, and we are the reporters for today's discussion. First, we'll tackle about the globalization theories. In globalization, there are two theories, which is homogeneity and heterogeneity.
First, we talk about homogeneity. So, what is homogeneity? So, homogeneity refers to increasing sameness in the world as cultural inputs, economic factors, and political orientation of societies expand to create a common practices, same economies, and similar forms of government. So, from the word sameness. So, same sila o kanang mga practices, kanang economies, and kanang sa form sa government is same sila. So, homogeneity in culture is often linked to cultural imperialism. So, this means a given culture kanang nag-impluensya sa other culture. So, for example, the dominant religion in our country is Christianity, which was brought to us by the Spaniards. Another example is Americanization, which was the import of non-American products, images, technologies, practices, and behavior that are closely associated with America or Americans. So, next is we talk about unsa din ang Americanization. So, Americanization is the process of an immigrant to the United States becoming a person who shares American culture, values, beliefs, and custom by assimilating into the American nation. So, back again to the example. So, sa import of non-American products, so, unsa nga products di ay ang kanang na-import. So, in kanang products is like kanang American brands like kanang Coca-Cola and kanang Apple products becoming popular worldwide. So, in images, so American movies, music, and fashion trends influencing the global taste. So, and technologies. So, American innovation like the internet and the smartphone being widely used. So, in the practices, so business methods and management styles kanang being adapted by the companies in other countries. So, kanang na-adapt na nila ang mga practices. So, behavior is kanang American values like kanang individualism and consumerism influencing societies. So, in terms of economy, kanang there is a recognition of the spread of neoliberalism, capitalism, and the market economy in the world. And now let's move on to neoliberalism. So neoliberalism emphasizes on free markets, deregulation, and privatization of government-owned industries. Next is capitalism, economic system based on the private ownership of resources and pursuit to profit. Next is market economy. So market economy is economic system where prices and production are determined by the supply and demand with minimal government intervention. So market economy is naa diha ang production sa mga goods and kanang mga products. Next is International Monetary Fund or IMF. Global economic crises are also a product of homogeneity in economic globalization. So according to Stiglitz 2002, for instance, they blame the International Monetary Fund or IMF for its one-size-fits-all. So this approach which treats every country in one world as the same. So what is International Monetary Fund? So it's an organization of 190 countries working to foster global monetary cooperation to secure financial stability, facilitate international trade, promote high employment and sustainable economic growth and reduce poverty around the world. So in the end, rich countries become advantageous in the world economy to expense of poor countries, which leads to increased inequality among nations. So from the word one size fits all. So this approach is for economic policy. So this refers to the tendency of the International Monetary Fund to impose similar conditions on all countries receiving financial assistance and regardless of their specific economic circumstances.
The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have been founded, just like the United Nations after World War II. Why? Mainly because after the war, everyone wanted peace. However, peace on an empty stomach is hard to maintain. So these two institutions were meant to help the economic stability of the world. Both of them are basically banks, but instead of being started by individuals, like regular banks, they've been started by countries. Most of the world's countries are members of the two institutions, but of course, the richest countries are those who handled most of the financing, and ultimately, those who have the greatest influence. The IMF and the World Bank were designed to complement each other. The IMF's main goal is helping countries which are currently in trouble and who cannot get money by other means. Perhaps their economy collapsed. Perhaps their currency is in danger. The IMF in these cases is kind of like a lender of last resort, who you go to when nobody else is willing to give you money. The World Bank, in comparison, has a more long-term approach. Its main goals revolve around the eradication of poverty, and it funds specific projects which help them reach these goals, especially in poor countries. Unfortunately, the reputation of these institutions has been dwindling, mainly due to practices such as lending to corrupt governments or even dictators and imposing ineffective austerity measures to get their money back. If run properly, however, they definitely could help make the world a better place.
What is Macworld? Macworld is a term referring to the spread of McDonald's restaurants throughout the world as a result of globalization and more generally to affects international McDonaldization of the service and commercialization of goods as an element of globalization as a whole. McDonaldization in general, the contemporary world is undergoing the process of McDonaldization. It is a process by which Western societies are dominated by the principles of fast food restaurant. So what is McDonaldization? So McDonaldization involves the global spread of rational system such as efficiency, calculability, predictability, and control.
Published his book titled The McDonaldization of Society. The term McDonaldization refers to the business model adopted by McDonald's in the fast food industry that focuses on the four main elements of efficiency, predictability, calculability, and control. These are said to be the most rational forms of running a business and operating within a capitalist system. With rationality, we replace traditional rules with logical and consistent ones. Let's take these four elements and apply them to your experience at a fast food restaurant. What is efficiency? You know you desire something to be efficient if you have ever complained at a fast food restaurant because your food was taking too long. Well, what is too long? 1 minute? 5 minutes? With efficiency, we expect to order an item and have it available right away. Efficiency also puts more expectation on the customer to do things for themselves, such as get their own beverage or condiments. This is convenient for both the customer and the business. The second element is predictability. We love what is familiar. And just like the McDonald's where you live, you expect a McDonald's in another city or country to have either the same menu items and atmosphere, or at least something close to it. Third is the idea of calculability. Let's face it, you don't go to McDonald's because you believe it is the best quality food. Well, why do you go? In addition to knowing what you will get and getting it quickly, you know you will get a lot of food for a small price. So in other words, we go for quantity over quality. Last, we have control. And primarily it's control through non-human technology. Technology ensures that our food is cooked and prepared the same way each time. This aids in de-skilling humans and turns them into employees that can be easily replaced. But McDonaldization is not just limited to the fast food industry. Today we see it everywhere from restaurants to banking systems to higher education. How have colleges and universities turned into places of McDonaldization? If you think about it, they focus on efficiency when you take a multiple choice test out on a computer, which automatically grades your test when you're done and then enters it automatically into an online grade book, which you can then check anytime, day or night. Predictability happens when we expect one professor to teach the same way and use similar teaching styles. Calculability shows up when what we produce in the classroom and what can be measured is the primary focus. You know this is true when what matters most to you is the grade you receive in the class or your GPA. Is this more important than the process of learning? Can all learning be quantifiable? And what about control? Standardized tests and an institution's rules and regulations on how and what is taught give a certain amount of control. And courses that are developed and packaged to be taught by any professor anywhere and outline exactly what needs to be done each class period have a great deal of control. All of these elements impact the type of education you
Heterogeneity refers to the differences of different cultures or the combinations of different cultures that cannot be produced through the different transparentary process. Contrary of cultural imperialism, heterogeneity in culture is associated with cultural hybridization. When we say heterogeneity, muna siya ang pagkahalahi sa culture of different countries. Or in the other hand, mauna siya ang culture nga gikan sa transplanetary process.
And today we're going to be taking a look at globalization, which is a combination of globalization and localization. I'm sure most of you have already heard of globalization, which is the process by which businesses or other organizations develop an internationally influence or start operating on an international scale. It has shaped our daily lives. We watch TV from America. We wear clothing made in Asia, and we eat food grown in Africa. Localization has sprung up to offer an alternative to globalization, as some people aim to move away from the global supply chains and develop cultures in favor of a more local one. There was a town not far from where I grew up called Totnes, which has introduced its own money to encourage people to spend locally on locally produced products and services. Globalization is the combination of the two. As global firms look to enter markets, they sometimes look to adapt their products and their marketing to suit the local market better. This has become increasingly common as it has allows them to make greater profits by increasing their sales, whilst at the same time it's still exploiting their economies of scale and their large supply chains to minimize costs. Good examples of this are KFC and McDonald's in Asia. They are constantly adapting their menus and introducing special products which are based on local foods or festivals. For example, McDonald's has a Sichuan flavored burger, and both McDonald's and KFC introduce special menus for special holidays, such as Chinese New Year. Also, famously, McDonald's decided not to sell its Big Mac in parts of India because Hindus do not eat beef, since it's sacred to their religion. It is not just food companies that do this, but also fashion companies and even toy companies. Back in the 1960s, Mattel was famous for making the Barbie. This toy was famous for her blonde hair and blue eyes. However, in more recent years, Barbie has been adapted to the needs of the local market and has now been made in various different varieties to suit their ethnicities. My favorite example of globalization comes from cinema. Modern movies have the ability to change different aspects of their films in post-production to suit the different markets and cultures. For example, in Pixar's movie Inside Out, they changed the vegetables being offered to the children because Western children view broccoli as disgusting. But in China and other Asian countries, children do not find broccoli that disgusting and they actually quite like it. They have also changed the sports in the background of this clip to better suit the audiences. I think this is an extremely clever way that allows more people to enjoy and understand your film. Films have also started changing their advertising based on which country the film is being shown in. This is an extremely clever way to make more money and higher profits and make their product better suited to local markets. Overall, I think it's a fairly positive thing that companies are showing more respect for local people. Their motivations are purely financial. By localizing their products, they can reach a bigger audience and earn higher profits. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please ask them down below. I'm always happy to help.
Jihad. The literal meaning of jihad is struggle and effort, and it means much more than a holy war. Muslims use the word jihad to describe three different kinds of struggle. First, a believer's internal struggle to live out. Second, the Muslim's faith as well as possible. Third, the struggle to build a good Muslim society. So, the literal meaning of jihad is suffer or effort. That means labaw pa sa holy war.
Dynamics of local and global culture. Global flows of culture tend to move more easily around the globe than ever before, especially through the non-materials digital form. So in today's societies, is kanang easy to flows culture using the digital forms and or the internet and than ever before. So there are three perspectives of global culture flows, such as first, cultural differentialism, second is cultural hybridization, third is cultural convergence. First, we talk about cultural differentialism. So what is cultural differentialism? So this emphasizes the fact that cultures are essentially different and are only superficially affected by the global flows. So as we born in this world, we have different cultural tradition and etc. Culture are different. This emphasizes that cultures have their own unique values, belief, tradition, and way of life. These differences are seen as fundamental and deeply rooted and not easily changed by the global forces. Now let's talk about Cold War. The Cold War was at a period of intense rivalry between the US and the Soviet Union, lasting from 1947 to 1991. So according to Huntington, after the Cold War, political economic differences were overshadowed by the new fault line, which were primarily culture and nature. So it increasing the interaction among different civilizations such as the Sunni, Islamic, Orthodox, and Western would lead to intense clashes, especially the economic conflict between the Western and the Sunni civilization. So this theory has been critiqued for a number of reasons, especially on its portrayal of Muslims are being prone to violence. Huntington's central argument is that after the Cold War that would be characterized by a new set of fault lines based on the cultural differences. He identified the several distinct civilizations, including first is Western. So Western is characterized by individualism, democracy, and human rights. And Sunni is emphasizing the Confucianism, collectivism, and the strong state. Next is Islamic, focus on the religious values, Islamic law, and distinct identity. And last is Orthodox, rooted in Eastern Orthodox Christianity with a strong emphasis on tradition and spirituality.
Cultural hybridization approach emphasizes the integration of local and global cultures. Globalization is considered to be a creative process which gives rise to hybrid entities that are not reducible to either the global or the local. So meaning, mao ni siyang isa ka way nga naghatag og gibugaton sa mga citizens aron maghiusa ang local o global culture. So according to Globalization Pod, siya ang naghatag og way sa mga hybrid entities nga dili mabawasan og bisag isa ang local o ang global culture. So, we are all familiar in Arjun Aparadurai's case. According to Aparadurai, the different kinds of globalization occur on multiple and intersecting dimensions of integration. His first case involves people, and that is what we call ethnoscape. His second scape involves technology, and that is what we call technoscape. His third scape involves finance, and it involves money, and that is what we call financescape. His first-scapes involves political images, and it involves politicians or political ideas, and it is what we call idioscape. His last scape involves media, and that is what we called mediascape.
Third is cultural convergence. So what is cultural convergence? So this approach stresses homogeneity that introduced by the globalization. So from the word convergence is kanang nagtagpo tanan or nag-abot tanang culture that stresses the homogeneity. Ang nag-introduce sa ana is ang globalization. Cultures are deemed to be radically altered by the strong flows, while cultural imperialism happens when one culture imposes itself on the tends to destroy at least parts of another culture. One important critic of the cultural imperialism is the idea of John Tomlinson, the word deterritorialization of culture. Deterritorialization means that it's much more difficult to tie culture to a specific geographic point of origin. From the word tie culture, so it's difficult to kanabitang i-connect nimo ang culture to culture, like imo siyang i-usahon. So
Globalization of the religion. Globalization has played a tremendous role in providing a context for the current revival and the resurgence of religion. Today, most religions are not relegated to the countries where they began. Globalization communications, global organizations, global finance, and the like have followed ideas of the Muslims and the universal Christian church to be given concrete shape as never before. So, ang globalization religion, mo ni siya ang naidako nga ikatabang or context sa pagbalik sa relihiyon. Kay karon daw, wala na gitagan of importance sa mga tao kung disagikan ang ato ang religion. Transplanetary relations. Transplanetary relations have helped to stimulate and sustain some renewals of anti-rationalist faith. But global networks have more usually promoted activities involving rationalist knowledge. So, kanidi ang transplanetary relations, muna siya ang naghatag or nagtabang sa tuang padayon sa tuang faith sa tuang giilang Ginoo. And kasagaran pud aning transplanetary relations, naghatag na siya og activities nga nag-involve og rational knowledge. In 2007 survey, the Financial Times revealed that majority of Europeans consider that globalization brings negative effects to their society. So, meaning, year 2007, most of the Europeans, niana sila nga mas daghan daw og negative effects ang globalization kaysa positive effects sa tuang country.
Next is the origin and history of globalization.
There are 5 different perspectives regarding the origin of globalization. First is the hardwired. Second is the cycles. Third is the epic. And fourth is the events. And 5 is the broader, more recent change. So first we talk about hardwired. So according to Nayan Chanda in 2007, it is our basic human needs to make our lives better that made globalization is possible. So the term hardwired in this context refers to something that is deeply ingrained in our nature like a pre-programmed instinct. Chanda identifies the 4 key urges that have shaped globalization throughout history. So first is commerce, the desire to trade goods and services for economic benefit. Next is the religion, the desire to spread religious beliefs and practices. Next is adventure, so the desire to explore new lands and experience different culture. Lastly is the conquest, is the desire to devour and control over resources and territory.
Cycles. For some, globalization is a long-term cyclical process and thus, finding its origin will be a daunting task. What is it important is the cycles that globalization has gone through. Subscribing to this view will suggest adherence to the idea that other global ages have appeared. There is also the notion to suspect that this point of globalization will soon disappear and reappear. Ang cycle di ay mo na siya hinungdan nganong nagsugod ang globalization. Kay for example, kaning ato ang naanden karon, mo po'y subayon sa generation nga nagsunod kanato hangtod sa sunod pa jud nga generation.
Next is epic. According to Research 2015, cited by Thurborn's 2000, 6 great effects of globalization, and they're also called waves, and each of them have their own origin. First is globalization of religion in 4th to 7th centuries. This era showed the spread of major religions like Christianity and Islam across vast geographical areas, influencing cultures and society worldwide. European colonial conquest of the late 15th century. The age of exploitation led to European powers colonizing various parts of the world, establishing trade routes and imposing their political and cultural system. Third is inter-European wars or late 18th and 19th centuries. Wars between European nations such as the Neapolitan Wars further intensified global interaction and competition for resources and power. Fourth is heyday of European imperialism mid-19 to 1918. This period witnessed the peak of European colonial expansion with vast swaths of land under their control, leading to significant economic and political influence globally. Fifth is post-World War II period in 1945 to 1991. After World War II, the emergence of United States and the Soviet Union as superpowers along with the rise of international organizations like the United Nations laid the new era of global cooperation and competition. Last is post-Cold War period in 1991 to the present. The collapse of Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War ushered in the period of increased globalization characterized by rapid technological advancement, free trade, and the rise of global interconnectedness.
Events. Specific events are also considered as part of the fourth view in explaining the origin of globalization. If this is the case, then several points can be treated as the start of globalization. The recent years could also be regarded as the beginnings of globalization, with adherence to specific technological advances in transportation and communication. Some examples include the first transatlantic telephone cable in 1956, the first transatlantic television broadcast in 1962, the founding of the modern Internet in 1988, and the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers in New York in 2001. So, ang event di ay sa unang panahon is also the main reason nga nagasugod ang globalization. Kay katong mga past years, i-consider na to nag-start na ang globalization. Og niuswag na ang technology tungod sa globalization kay nag-globalize man ta sa lain nga countries.
Last is the broader, more recent change. So recent change comprise the fifth view. So this broad change happened in the last half of the 20th century. Scholars today point to these three notable changes as the origin of globalization that we know today. So there are follows. First is the emergence of the United States as a global power or post-World War II. Second is the emergence of multinational corporation or MNC. Third is the demise of Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War.
Global demography. Demographic transition is a singular historical period during which mortality and fertility rates decline from high to low levels in particular country or region. The broad outlines of the transition are similar in countries around the world, but the pace and timing of the transition we have varied considerably. So, kanilang global demography, it is where from the start of our life or from the beginning of our life na naigalista nato kung asa tang lugar nagpuyo, kung usa tang religion na belong. Global migration. The nuances of the movements of people around the world can be seen through the categories of migrants, vagabonds, and tourists. Kanilang global migration, once nga mo ato ta abroad, makita di sa to ang kategory kung sa tong mga nilihukan dito kung sayop batong lihok or kung sakto batong gipanglihok-lihok dito sa lain nga kan. Vagabonds are on the move because they have to be. They are not faring well in their home countries and are forced to move in the hope that their circumstances will improve. Vagabonds are those persons who don't have a permanent address. In other hand, sila ang mga turista or mga tao nga magsigi ug balhin-balhin tungod kay ganahan sila or kaya na nila. Nga according to Haddad, naiuban na ilahang kaugalingon nga country tungod sa poverty. Example ana kay ang mga OFW. Migration. Migration is traditionally governed either by push factors such as political, persecution, economic depression, war and famine in the home country, or by pull factors such as favorable immigration policy, a labor shortage, and a similarity of language and culture in the country of destination. Global factors which facilitates easy access to information about the country of destination also exert a significant influence. Migration. Migration is traditionally governed either by push factors such as political, persecution, economic depression, war and famine in the home country, or by pull factors such as favorable immigration policy, a labor shortage, and a similarity of language and culture in the country of destination. Global factors which facilitates easy access to information about the country of destination also exert a significant influence. Vagabonds are those persons who don't have a permanent address. In other hand, sila ang mga turista or mga tao nga magsigi ug balhin-balhin tungod kay ganahan sila or kaya na nila. Nga according to Haddad, naiuban na ilahang kaugalingon nga country tungod sa poverty. Example ana kay ang mga OFW. So, kaning migration kay ang mga tao or mga OFW nga nag-migrate sa lain nga nasod. So, pagkakaroon, daghan ang countries ang nag-atubang sa illegal migration. For example, ay kanang mga OFW nga mobiya sila sa country nga ilang gitrabahuan bisan wala pa mahuman ang ilahang visa or mo-transfer sila og lain nga country para dito manaman narbaho. Nay countries pod nga same og concern sa illegal migration. Ug mao ni sila ang Great Britain, Switzerland, Greece, and a few countries in Asia.
Next is diaspora. The term diaspora has been increasingly used to describe migrant communities. So migrant is a person who moves from one place to another, especially in order to find work or better living condition. So according to Folgeroyd in 1993, the particular interest is of conceptualization of the diaspora as a transnational process which involves dialogue to both imagine and real locales. Diasporization and globalization are closely interconnected, and expansion of the latter will lead to an increase in the former. So today, there exist virtual diasporas. So according to Laguerre 2002, which utilize technology such as the internet to maintain the community network.